So I want you to imagine sitting alone in a dark NASA observatory.
Right, just totally isolated.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Outside, there's rain streaking down the glass, and it is the middle of the night. You're just staring at a computer screen, listening to the hissing static of deep space.
Just that white noise.
Right, but then as you lean in, you realize the static isn't actually random. Hidden right beneath that chaotic noise is a mathematically perfect signal.
Like a pattern.
Exactly, a pulse repeating every 12 minutes with absolute precision. And here's the kicker. It's not coming from some distant galaxy. It's coming from our moon.
Wow. Yeah, that's...
Right. So how would you react if the universe suddenly started speaking directly to you?
I mean, it's the ultimate first contact scenario, really.
Yeah.
But instead of, flying saucers hovering over the White House, it's grounded in this very solitary, quiet, intensely human moment of discovery.
Yeah.
You were just alone in a room, and the entire weight of the universe just drops right onto your shoulders.
It's chilling. So, welcome to today's deep dive. Our mission today is exploring the really thrilling narrative constructed in excerpts from Steve Simkowski's book, The Venusians Among Us, the second edition.
It's quite a ride.
Oh, absolutely. We are going to unpack the hidden history of a parallel universe and investigate a secret 3,000-year-old war being fought right here on Earth under our noses. Plus, we're going to examine an ancient vessel hiding in the shadows of the lunar surface.
There's a lot of ground to cover.
There really is. Okay, let's unpack this, because reading through these sources, I realize this story absolutely does not waste any time getting to the implications of that moon signal.
No, it sets a completely relentless pace right from the jump. And the author uses these classic science fiction tropes, right? Like ancient aliens, secret societies, suppressed technology.
Oh, yeah, all the hits.
Right, but he employs them to explore some very deep functional themes. It's about hidden power structures, the artificial limitations of human progress, and what we would practically do if our entire understanding of recorded history was just suddenly upended.
Yeah, and when I first opened the source material, I was expecting a standard space opera, but it really starts as this tightly wound psychological thriller.
It's very intimate at first.
Exactly. We begin with this catalyst that completely shatters the ordinary life of our protagonist. His name is Ian Mercer, and he's an aerospace engineer for NASA based in Cleveland, Ohio.
Which is such a great, grounded setting.
Right. He's the guy alone in the dark, basically obsessed with this precise, intentional lunar signal he caught during a deep spectrum survey. But it's not just the data on his monitors that's bothering him. He's starting to have these incredibly vivid, escalating dreams.
And they feel way too real to just be, like, work stress.
Exactly.
These aren't your typical anxiety dreams, where you show up to a high school math test in your underwear.
Right, right.
They're hyper-detailed. They're these intense architectural visions.
Yeah, he's dreaming of these endless silver blue crystalline corridors. And he sees literally thousands of humans sleeping, suspended in these glowing columns of pale blue energy.
Almost like stasis pods.
Yeah, exactly. And he sees Venus, but not the dead, toxic, crushing atmosphere planet we know today. He sees this thriving Venus with golden skies, massive floating cities, rivers of silver light.
A whole utopian image.
Right. But cutting through all of those amazing visuals, he keeps hearing thousands of unified voices whispering a single phrase: "We remember."
What's fascinating here is the author's choice to anchor this awakening in an audio signal rather than, a visual manifestation or some physical artifact. Audio represents a bridge.
Oh, that's an interesting way to look at it.
Yeah, because Ian's human scientific reality is entirely based on analyzing auditory waveforms on a monitor.
Yeah.
So his dormant alien consciousness actually uses that exact same auditory pathway to start bleeding through into his waking life.
Ah, right.
The hallucination really grounds the grand sci-fi concepts in Ian's immediate, tangible reality.
That makes total sense, because one night in the lab, that bridge is definitely crossed. Ian hears an actual audio distortion embedded in the real lunar signal on his equipment. It is not in his head anymore.
That's the terrifying part.
Yeah. And the distortion perfectly matches the whispers from his dreams, and it just says, "Synchronization pending." As a reader, you get this sinking feeling that a massive invisible clock has just struck midnight,
The countdown is over.
Exactly. And almost immediately, things abruptly escalate in the physical world. I mean, heavily armed men literally kick down the door of Ian's apartment in the middle of the night.
Talk about a wake-up call.
Yeah. He is completely blindsided, just a total civilian in a war zone. But his seemingly normal neighbor, Kendra, she suddenly turns into this highly trained operative, pulls a weapon, and rescues him.
Out of nowhere.
Totally. And they end up escaping the assassins in this heavily armored tactical vehicle that is hilariously disguised. It has a logo on the side that says H. Wang Key's Plumbing Service.
It's a brilliant juxtaposition of the cosmic and the utterly mundane, honestly.
Yeah, it really is.
I mean, one minute you're receiving a synchronization message from a lunar artifact, and the next you're dodging automatic weapons fire in a fake plumbing van on the streets of Cleveland.
It's like finding out the email spam folder you've been ignoring for a month actually contains a highly classified distress beacon from another dimension.
Right.
And because you finally clicked on it, the men in black are kicking down your front door. You have zero context for what is happening, but your survival instinct just takes over.
And that sheer desperation for context.
Yeah.
You know, the need to understand why your neighbor has a bulletproof plumbing van that leads Ian and the listener directly into the hidden infrastructure of this entire shadow war.
Which takes us physically underground. And if you're listening to this and thinking like secret alien bases under Ohio, really, you kind of have to appreciate how Zimkowski grounds this in actual local geography.
It's very specific.
Very. Kendra takes Ian down into this massive hidden facility located beneath Cleveland's old Chinatown district. The book explains these were originally 1800s Chinese smuggling tunnels, but over a century, they've been retrofitted into this high-tech military bunker.
Which is just such a cool visual.
It is. And Ian is brought into a room to meet this group called the Council of Guardians. And if dodging assassins wasn't overwhelming enough, he walks into this boardroom and locks eyes with his aunt and uncle.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Two people he literally watched die and buried in the ground years ago.
The psychological whiplash Ian experiences here is just immense. I mean, the people he actively grieved for explained that the bodies in those caskets were biological replicas.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, his family systematically faked their own deaths purely to break their public connection to him and protect him from the very people who just shot up his apartment.
And they had to protect him because, as this historian named Anna explains to Ian, none of them are human.
Right, the big reveal.
Yeah, they are refugees from a place called Graddock, which is this dying parallel universe that overlaps with our own through spatial fractures, basically naturally occurring wormholes.
And their biology is distinctly non-human, even if they look exactly like us.
Right. They possess vastly superior immune systems, their cellular aging happens at a fraction of our rate, and they carry this subtle genetic identifier. It's a mark barely visible to human eyes, called the Star of Ishtar, right on their right upper arm.
This is where the historical lore of the narrative really opens up and provides the foundation for literally everything that follows.
Yeah, it sets the stage.
So, Graddock was a highly advanced civilization that nearly annihilated itself through endless warfare before they finally achieved a tenuous peace. When their universe began to undergo a structural collapse, they evacuated in these massive colony ships through those spatial fractures.
Okay.
And their absolute unbreakable rule of exodus was, do not settle on inhabited world.
You're the one to be careful.
Exactly. They viewed themselves strictly as refugees, terrified of polluting a young species with their own historical baggage. But a military commander named Cyprus Gorse, he mutinied upon arriving in our solar system. He saw young Earth and didn't want to be a refugee. He wanted to be a god.
And Ian's parents were the political leaders opposing Gorse's mutiny. So during the conflict, to save baby Ian, they sealed him inside a suspended animation tube and jettisoned it to Earth, where it crashed deep into Lake Erie.
Just incredible stakes.
Right. And it was programmed to wake him up thousands of years in the future, long after Gorse would have theoretically lost track of his bloodline, which is why Ian grew up thinking he was just a regular guy in Ohio, quietly watched over by this Council of Guardians.
It's a great setup.
It is, but reading through this biology section, I found myself really snagging on a specific piece of the lore. I kind of had to push back on this genetic premise a bit.
Oh, what stood out to you?
Well, Anna explains to Ian that Venusians from Graddock and humans physically cannot interbreed. Their DNA structures are just fundamentally incompatible.
Right. Yeah.
That is the ultimate genetic firewall. But we are talking about a population that has lived secretly alongside humans for 3,000 years. 3 millennia of human history.
It's a long time.
It is. How do you physically and socially maintain a secret, isolated population for that long without eventually merging into the wider human gene pool, or at least attempting to?
It's a critical question, actually, and it speaks to the intense, almost traumatic isolation of this group. The narrative really implies the Guardians have maintained a strict monastic dedication to their bloodlines, not out of arrogance, but out of sheer survival instinct.
Okay, so it's born of fear.
Exactly.
Oh.
If we look at the mechanics of it, it's not just a social choice, it's a biological imperative enforced by that fear. Integrating means risking exposure.
Well, because of their biology.
Right. If a human partner finds out their spouse doesn't age or, survives a fatal disease without a scratch, the secret is out. And exposure, in the Guardians' minds, means humanity would turn on them out of xenophobic fear.
Wait, so it's kind of like running a piece of legacy software on a modern computer? The Venusians basically had to build a complete biological and social virtual machine around their community so they wouldn't accidentally interact with the human operating system and trigger a catastrophic system failure for everyone.
That is a perfect way to conceptualize it, actually. They isolated themselves because the refugee versus conqueror dynamic is the core trauma of their entire species. They are terrified of repeating the very wars that destroyed their old universe.
Right?
They view themselves as caretakers of a dead legacy, whereas the opposing faction views Earth as a canvas for a new empire.
Which is the perfect bridge to understanding the enemy, because if the Guardians went to such extreme lengths to hide and isolate themselves just to stay peaceful, what exactly were they so terrified of triggering?
And that brings us to the Conquerors.
Right. While Ian's people were hiding in underground bunkers, Cyprus Gorse's descendants were actively shaping the planet. They're currently led by a man named Howard Gorse, who operates out of these heavily fortified black sites, like the abandoned Ravenna Arsenal in Ohio.
He's everywhere.
Yeah, and Howard's faction hasn't just been hiding, they've been embedding themselves like a parasite in the global host. They silently control major human governments, key intelligence agencies, massive corporate empires.
And crucially, Howard's primary objective isn't just wealth or power, it's suppression. He deliberately ensures that humanity remains technologically limited.
Which is wild. The sources mention he suppresses deep quantum research and interstellar capabilities. But how does a shadow government actually pause global human innovation? I mean, you can't just uninvent things.
Well, you don't have to uninvent things if you control the bottlenecks.
What do you mean?
The implication is that Howard's embedded agents operate at the highest levels of academic funding, patent offices, and global supply chain.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, if a brilliant human scientist is on the verge of a breakthrough in zero-point energy, Howard's people don't necessarily assassinate them. They just ensure their funding is abruptly cut, or their research is buried in bureaucratic peer review hell.
Or like the parts they need just become unavailable.
Exactly. The specific rare earth minerals required for their prototypes suddenly experience a global supply chain shortage. Howard creates artificial scientific plateaus to ensure human science remains entirely manageable.
Man, that is bleak. So Ian realizes that his mere existence threatens this entire global suppression apparatus. He actually renames his people the Council of Advisors, signaling an end to their passive hiding.
They're going on the offensive.
Yeah, but they have a massive problem. Over 3,000 years, the Guardians have lost their own ancient technical knowledge. It's just decayed into myth. They need to gather scattered data fragments hidden across the globe by their ancestors just to understand their own capabilities.
And doing that requires a massive, coordinated effort. They need a cover operation so public and so legitimately human that Howard's intelligence apparatus can't simply shut it down without drawing unwanted global attention.
I was reading this section where they plan this, and it is a fantastic logistical puzzle. They use Ian's former college advisor, Professor Leo Kramer. And it turns out Kramer was secretly placed at the university by the Guardians decades ago.
The long game.
Seriously. Kramer uses his academic clout to propose an international NASA lunar symposium to be held right in downtown Cleveland, directly above the underground Guardian facility.
Brilliant.
Right. This symposium brings legitimately brilliant human scientists and engineers from all over the world, which provides the perfect chaotic background noise. It gives the hidden Venusian archivists a valid excuse to travel internationally without flagging Howard's algorithms.
The espionage mechanics in this sequence are incredibly well thought out. It really emphasizes the deep asymmetry of this secret war. Howard has satellites, military black sites, and unlimited capital. The Guardians have to rely on stealth, misdirection, and analog coordination.
The mechanics are thrilling. You have this high society academic conference happening in the ballroom discussing lunar geology. But the waiters pouring the champagne and the caterers clearing the plates are all highly trained Guardian operatives.
Just hiding in plain sight.
Exactly. They are passing encrypted solid-state storage devices folded inside currency. They are slipping microdrives under napkins and into coat pockets right under the noses of Howard's embedded security agents. It is a high-stakes, high-tech heist happening completely in the open.
It is. But this complex heist raises a very fundamental question about the balance of power in this universe.
Yes. Here's where it gets really interesting, and I found myself asking this exact question while reading. If Howard Gorse has controlled the planet's power structures for centuries, if he has all the money and all the military might, why hasn't he just taken total control of the alien technology?
Right.
What is the missing key that keeps a global dictator checking over his shoulder?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it comes down to the critical difference between infrastructure and authority.
Okay, unpack that.
Well, Howard have all the resources of Earth at his disposal, yes. But the original Gradic technology, the true ancient power that could bend space and time, it's biologically locked.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it is keyed specifically to the genetic lineage of the original leaders. It's locked to Ian's specific bloodline. The technology literally will not respond to Howard's DNA.
That is wild.
It's a phenomenal narrative device. It takes this sprawling, insurmountable global conspiracy and makes a single, confused aerospace engineer from Ohio utterly indispensable to both sides of the war.
So Howard is kind of stuck.
Completely. Howard can't just assassinate Ian. He needs him alive to unlock the ancient tech. But simultaneously, Howard is terrified of what will happen to his empire if Ian actually realizes his own power and uses it.
And the magnitude of that ancient power is revealed because of a massive defection during the conference. One of Howard's top operatives, a man named Edward Case, spots one of the Guardian waiters passing a data drive.
Which should be the end of it.
Right, but instead of triggering an alarm or quietly assassinating the waiter, Edward corners him and demands a secret face-to-face meeting with Ian.
The psychology of a traitor is always complex, and Edward is taking an unfathomable risk here. I mean, he is stepping out of the protection of a global superpower to make a deal with an underground resistance that barely has functioning weapons.
It's a huge leap of faith. They set up the meeting at the Soldiers and Sailors Monument in downtown Cleveland. And to ensure privacy, Edward literally calls in a fake bomb threat to clear the tourists and local police out of the room. Yeah. And once they are alone, Edward drops an absolute bombshell that shifts the entire paradigm of the story. The original Gradic colony ship from 3,000 years ago didn't burn up during the mutiny. It is fully intact.
And it isn't just buried in the ice somewhere on Earth. It's parked in the moon's gravitational shadow on the far side, hidden perfectly in the Lagrange point where Earth's gravity and the moon's gravity balance out.
Wait, but how does a 3,000-year-old spaceship hide from modern human satellites and lunar orbiters? I mean, we have mapped the moon.
Well, the ship is enveloped by advanced electromagnetic and thermal distortion fields. It doesn't just turn invisible, it actively bends radar waves around its hull and matches the ambient thermal radiation of deep space.
Oh, so it just blends in.
Exactly. To human instruments, it just looks like empty vacuum.
And Howard actually has a skeleton crew living on this massive ship. They fly back and forth to Earth in secret atmospheric shuttles, which, the book notes, perfectly explains decades of unexplained human UFO sightings.
I love that detail.
Same. But here is Edward's leverage. Howard can't unlock the primary archive systems on the lunar ship without Ian's specific DNA signature. Edward wants to defect because he knows Howard is getting closer to cracking the archive.
Right.
Edward wants to flee Earth with Ian's people before Howard weaponizes that ancient technology and enslaves both worlds.
It completely flips the tactical board.
So basically, Howard stole the universe's most advanced smartphone 3 millennia ago. He can charge it, he can carry it around, but he doesn't have the biological Face ID to unlock the home screen. And Ian is the only one walking around with the right face.
That is precisely the dynamic. And structurally, Edward's defection is the pivot point of the entire narrative.
How so?
Well, it forces the story out of a purely defensive hiding game where Ian is just reacting to attacks and trying to survive, and transitions it into an offensive heist. The Guardians aren't just running anymore. They are actively plotting to steal the ship.
Oh, right. They have a goal now.
Exactly. But this raises the critical question of trust, which is notoriously difficult in a war built entirely on deception. Edward has served the enemy his entire life. How can Ian possibly trust him?
I mean, he kind of has to trust him out of sheer necessity, right? Because knowing the ship is parked on the moon is useless if no one knows how to fly it. Even with all the scattered data fragments they gathered at the symposium, the Guardians just don't have the practical engineering knowledge anymore.
They've been stuck on Earth.
Yeah, they've been hiding in tunnels for too long. So Ian realizes he has to cross the ultimate line. He has to bring ordinary humans into a 3,000-year-old alien war.
The Guardians have the biological keys, but they need human propulsion experts to reverse engineer the ancient schematics. They need human minds to translate myth back into math.
Exactly. So Ian starts by recruiting his old NASA colleague, John. And to get John off Howard's surveillance radar, they stage a fake drunken drowning incident in Lake Erie.
A bit extreme, but effective.
Yeah. Once Howard's spies assume John is dead in the water, the Guardians pull him through an underwater airlock into the Cleveland base. John wakes up, sees his supposedly dead friend Ian, and is essentially given the craziest briefing in history.
I can't even imagine.
Right, like, hey, aliens are real, Ian is one of them, and they need help with warp equations.
It is the ultimate extreme version of being called into the office on your day off. But John quickly realizes that while they can't build a new ship, they can reverse engineer the suspended animation tubes, the exact same technology Ian arrived in as a baby, and modify them to be used as localized launch capsules.
But they still don't understand the physics of the lunar ship's main engines. Thankfully, Edward's defection pays off. He knows exactly where Howard is keeping two captive human propulsion engineers, John and Kathy Thornton.
They're essential to the plan.
Totally. They are basically enslaved in a black site in Pasadena, California, forced to work on Howard's secret projects. Getting them out requires a phenomenal extraction sequence involving identical decoy taxis to confuse Howard's surveillance SUVs and staging a massive, blinding gas tanker explosion in an intersection.
It's so cinematic.
It really is. It provides just 3 seconds of cover for a tractor-trailer to scoop up the engineer's taxi and vanish into the night. It's a great action scene, but looking at the bigger picture, I found myself questioning Ian's morality here.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, isn't Ian making a massive hypocritical mistake by bringing the Thorntons and John into this?
In what way?
His parents originally died to protect humanity from alien interference. The entire philosophy of the Guardians was to let humans develop naturally without polluting them with Graddock's violent history. But here's Ian actively recruiting human engineers, pulling innocent people into a deadly crossfire to hotwire an ancient alien spaceship.
I see your point.
Isn't he actively breaking the fundamental prime directive of his own people?
This raises an important question, but I wouldn't call it hypocritical. I'd call it a necessary evolution of doctrine.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, the old rules of absolute non-interference were written for a passive hiding phase. But they are in an active war phase now, and the paradigm has shifted. Yes, Ian's parents wanted humans to develop naturally, but Howard Gorse has already corrupted that natural development by artificially suppressing human science.
Ah, so the damage is already done.
Exactly. The purity of the original Guardian mission is already compromised. Ian realizes that a rigid adherence to their ancestors' rules kept them alive in the dark, but it also paralyzed them. You cannot fight a dirty, deeply embedded war with clean hands.
That makes sense.
Ian makes the difficult moral calculation that blending Graddock's biological heritage with human audacity and engineering is the only way to prevent Howard from permanently enslaving both species.
It's the messy reality of survival overriding theoretical ethics. And all of that messy human ingenuity culminates in this incredible launch sequence. They transport the newly reverse-engineered silver launch capsules to an abandoned Nike missile facility, a relic of the Cold War, hidden under Cleveland.
The irony is perfect.
Isn't it? They load 10 of these silver capsules. Inside are Ian, Kendra, Edward the Defector, the human engineers, and a small Guardian security team. In the middle of a massive thunderstorm, they launch straight up, shooting silently through the clouds, leaving Earth behind to head toward the dark side of the moon and reclaim a technological heritage they barely understand.
It's a breathless, high-stakes conclusion that perfectly sets the stage for the next phase of the conflict. They finally stopped hiding, but they are stepping directly into a ship that has been occupied and studied by their greatest enemy for 3 millennia. They are essentially invading their own home.
Reading that sequence leaves you desperate to start the next chapter immediately. But taking a step back from the action, the lore of this universe leaves us with a much bigger, slightly unsettling concept to chew on.
Oh, definitely.
Think about our own reality for a second. Think about the technological plateaus in human history. The Dark Ages, or the decades where certain fields of science just seem to stall out in bureaucratic red tape or unexplained funding cuts.
It happens all the time.
Right. If an ancient, highly advanced civilization truly decided to embed itself into our global governments to ensure we never advanced past a manageable technological threshold, how would we even know?
That is the lingering paranoia the book instills. In the real world, we naturally attribute our scientific limits to the hard laws of physics or lack of institutional funding or endless political gridlock.
Sure.
But this narrative forces you to look at those bottlenecks and ask, what if those limits are entirely artificial? What if the red tape is actually a cage?
What if the limits of our science aren't natural barriers, but intentionally imposed firewalls managed by someone watching from the shadows? Next time you look up at the moon on a rainy night and you see that silver glow cutting through the clouds, just wonder who might be looking back and what they are keeping from us. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.